Hey there, this is the 6th section of the ProtoPie course, and this is where we're going to learn how to do an animated transition between screens. So when I click here, I can go to the second screen. So I make the animations and then the jump, and then I move to the second scene where when I tap back, it goes back to the previous scene. One thing to note is that we're going to be using constraints to animate, so it's going to be a lot easier because when you change the size of this box, for example, it affects all of the rest that is inside. As I mentioned before, we have the assets, we have the template for begin and final, but also we have the sketch file for this specific design. So we have the home and then the full view, and it's important to have this open so that we can go to ProtoPie, create a new pie, and then from here we can import from Sketch, selecting home, setting at 3x, and then we're gonna get all the layers. So I want to walk through some of the things that we need to consider as we prepare for this animation. So for example, we need to consider that we're gonna move this to the top left, we're gonna resize this container, and when we resize this, you can see that this is an image. And because it's an image, it's not resizable and it's not going to adapt. So let me get back to where it was first, and we have to recreate one layer in particular, which is the background. So this card right here, instead of having a merged image, we're going to create a rectangle. So first of all, I'm going to select this card right here and click on shape and create a rectangle. I'm gonna put this right here and I'm gonna resize this to the size of the frame. So the goal is to recreate exactly the same as this card, but using a shape. So the first thing is to get the color using the color picker. I'm gonna rename this as cover, and then we're going to recreate also the shadow. So the shadow is going to be a dark blue with this code, and then I'm going to set to 30% opacity, 15Y, and 20 blur. So I'm gonna resize back to the full size of the frame, and now I can delete this merge bitmap. And the rest is just to set the corner radius to 16 right here. So I just recreated this background for the card, and if I start resizing this, still has the same problem, but at least if I use constraints, so instead of having a fixed width, I'm gonna remove the fixed width and set the constraints to left, top, and right as well. And like this, it's going to adapt when I resize the frame. On top of that, I need to make sure that the elements inside are going to be sticking to the right positions as I resize. So for example, this little wireframe background, I'm gonna set it to the right instead of the left. And also this illustration, I'm going to set it to the right as well. So now when I resize this, it's looking pretty good. So now we can start animating it. I'm going to click card, add a trigger, set it to tap, and then the first thing is to animate the card itself. I'm going to move it to position 0, 0. If I click this, it's simply going to move to the top left, and I'm going to also resize it using scale. And here I'm going to set it to the width of the device. And voila. The cool thing is that I didn't have to animate the elements inside, especially the right ones, and it just adapts to the size when it's being scaled. Now I'm going to fix the corner radius. So I'm gonna click on the cover, set animation for radius, and then I'm going to set that to 0. So the goal is to create something that is similar to this screen right here, but we have more elements in play. So we have this text and then we have the white background. So we're gonna have to create those elements. First of all, I'm going to create a new scene and import the full view scene. And now I have this one, which is the text. So what I'm gonna do is the white background, I'm going to recreate it using a rectangle, but for this one, I'm just gonna copy it in case that I'm gonna use it later on. So I'm gonna go back to home, and inside the card container, I'm going to first of all create a new shape called rectangle. We're gonna rename it background. Set it to white, and then set it to the size of the frame. And this is going to be underneath the cover, so the blue cover that we see here. When it expands, we're gonna expand the background even more, serving as sort of like a background for the second scene, and it's going to be white. For now, I'm going to set it to the same constraints, so left, top, and right, and set it to the same corner radius, which is 16. And then I'm going to paste that text layer that we had. And inside this card container, which is really important, I'm going to set the position to 30, 30. So it's going to start right here. Now we can start animating. The first thing is the background. So I'm going to set a scale. I'm gonna set it to the size of my device, which is 375/812. And if I click, now you can see that the background just covered the whole screen. And then I'm going to animate the text. So I'm gonna click the text and set the text to move, and set the position move to 400. So when I click, now the text presents itself. One thing that I need to fix is just the status bar. I'm gonna put it underneath so that I can hide it as I go to the second screen. Great, so now we need to arrange our scenes so that we can jump to the second scene. I'm gonna click on the scene editor, and I don't really need the second scene anymore because I can just reuse the first scene. I'm going to duplicate this scene. The first one I'm gonna name home, and the second one I'm gonna name full view. Jumping to the second scene, which is called full view, I just need to rearrange my layers so that it fits exactly what I'm gonna see in my design. So it's very simple. First of all, I need to move this to the top left and resize it like this, just the same way that I animated. So on the cover, I'm going to set the corner radius to 0. For the background, let's set it to the full size of the device, 812. And for the text, we're gonna set the Y position to 400. Then I can reverse the animations. So if you need to know the values, you can find in the sketch file or in the first scene. In this case, I'm just gonna put them. So for the card move, we're gonna move to 16 and then 140. For the scale, we're gonna move back to 343. The radius, we're gonna set it to 16. The scale of the white background, it's gonna be 343 and then 350 in terms of height. And then we're gonna move the text to 30. Okay, so if everything works well, if I click here, it should just go back to the way the first screen is supposed to look like. And now I can just jump back to the first screen and then do a proper jump. So after tap, at the end right here, I'm going to add a jump to the full view, and it's not going to be instant, it's going to have a delay. So I'm going to set the delay right after the animation is over, not before. So when I click here, you can see at this point we're on the second screen. And on the second screen, I need to make sure to come back. So I'm using the jump again to go back to home, set the delay to be after. Voila. But we do have a problem. The problem is that once the animation is over and we jump, the animation does not reset afterwards. So what you need to do is to reset the selected scene. And this is really important. And I need to do that for both jumps. So I'm gonna select the first jump as well and click on reset the selected scene. And if I do that right, I should be able to go back and forth forever. Of course, we can also decide to change the animation to be spring, which add a really nice effect. So here I'm gonna set it to, let's say, this one. But when I do that, I can see that my duration for this animation is going to be very long. So I need to adjust also my delay for the jump. So now I see the full animation. In this case, I'm just gonna set it to 320, and now I have a duration of 0.65, which means that I can set my delay to 0.7 or 65, which is fine. And I'm going to do the same on the full view scene, setting to spring, 320, jump set to 0.7, and now I have a really nice spring animation. So you might be asking, well, why don't we do everything in a single scene? Well, if you do that, first of all, you're gonna end up having a ton of interactions in that single scene, and at some point it becomes unmanageable. It's really, really hard to add new stuff to that scene. And secondly, we can also create some interesting interaction, which we're gonna learn in the next section, where we can drag. So I'm gonna go to the second scene and we're gonna start dragging and then adding some really nice effect, and then after the drag is simply going to change the scene. So it allows you to create something that is very, very realistic to how you would build that in code in a real app. So make sure to stick around. We're gonna learn about pull to dismiss interaction in the next session. I'll see you then.